All right, everybody, welcome to Minimalist CSS. We are going to be doing Smash Ball, a fictional sport, and we're going to be helping people value their their collections of Smash Ball cards. All right, so let's start. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to make an index.html and an app.css. And just for good measure, I'll throw a JavaScript file in there, just so we have it. Let's go ahead and serve this up. So you're doing something like this. First thing you want to figure out is the markup. Even like before we decide how this is going to look, how is it structured? What's the data? How is the data related to other data? Like, this baffles people sometimes, but hopefully this process will be illustrative to you. Okay, so let's get the style sheet in here. By the way, you may have noticed that I always do the title and the meta char set thing, even in these little toy apps and stuff. They're required for it to be a valid HTML document. You can leave them out. You can also leave out this pragma at the top, which is, by the way, what that's called. But don't. They're really easy to put in, and you technically did not write valid HTML if it does not have. You can't do this and using the HTML5 stuff. Technically, has to have a head, has to have a body, has to have a title, has to have a character set. Those are the minimum requirements for an HTML page. All right, so I want something that's going to identify this page. So say Smash Ball card valuator. Your H1, I don't know if anybody told you this, but the H1 through H6 thing doesn't have anything to do with how big the text is or anything. It's describing the hierarchy of the content on the page. You are always supposed to have an H1, and you're always supposed to have exactly one of them. So it should be something that uniquely identifies the page. I think logos are fair game. You can make an argument that like that's not the H1. The name of the like specific page on the site you're on is the H1. I tend to go with the name of the organization or the company or whatever. And then the other headings, like an H2 has to follow an H1. You can't have one without having an H3. You can't skip them. You can't do an H1 and H2 and then an H4. They're supposed to describe a hierarchy of information. So let's say maybe we've got, you want to search for a card. So it's going to be inside of a form. going to have a little like auto text search thing. This will be card. Card search input. Yep. Card name. There we go. I'll go with that. All right, so I have an input. And then below it, we're going to have a list of every Smashball card. And then we're going to use this form to filter through them. Okay, so that's going to be an unordered list because the order that we're showing the cards in isn't significant. They're not ranked or something like that. And then we presumably have a card of some sort. And what's going to go inside the card? Oh, here's a pro tip. So we're going to have like a few different things in this card. Put the class on that. Even if you haven't done any React or Vue or anything like that, what this card is and the fact that it's one of a bunch of cards should generally be two separate concerns. All right, things that we want in this card. Should probably describe this as like existing cards. Anytime I see a heading all by itself, one of the questions I ask myself is this actually a section of the page? The section is kind of like a div. It's very generic, except it always has a, well, not always. It generally has a heading with it also. And I think that makes sense, that this is a section of the page that shows a list of cards. All right, and then in each one of these cards, could say that, I'd be talked out of making that an H3, but I'm going to go with it for right now. And Steve Jenny has a position. And he's the Ketchler. So then we could do like, you could do a couple of these things. Maybe each of these are, and player data label, in which case you want to wrap both of those in spans. Maybe something like that. So turns out that like this kind of idea of having like key value pairs, we're using really generic ass tags here. So we have a P tag and two spans. We can get more specific than that. We can call this a description list. And we can call this a description term. And then call this description data. That's a little bit better. Anytime you can use a more specific tag, you probably should. So let's do one more. Could do. Starting seasons 2019, and this is their team. Okay, so we've got this this player data in here, and then we also want to have a card value. This card is worth $65. It's actually serving up. There we go. Okay, so there's our card. Let's throw a few of them on the page. All right. So we've actually done some really important things here. We have figured out what the data that needs to be on the page is. And that's where design starts. It always starts from the actual content. You can't be minimalist about shit if you don't know what it is that you're actually describing. So now that we have all of this here, we can do some work around how this should be presented. So one of the things that I'll do when I'm doing this is make what I call a content inventory. Or as my 4-year-old calls it, an inventorium. So for that player data, we've got position, starting season, team, and card value. And then we also have a search input. And we also have name of the page. Cool, so those are the things we need to find a home for. I'm gonna say, let's start from the inside out on this. Let's figure out what these cards look like. The trap, and I talk to capstoners about this all the fucking time. The trap is to make it look more or less like we just did, where say position is whamp and team is whamp, and the season is whatever, and then the value is whatever. And then maybe we've got picture of the person and name is their name. So the problem with that is you basically just mirrored your database and put it in the UI. That is not minimalist. So if we're trying to figure out a minimalist way to do this, then we figure out what can we take out. And things like, since this is a card evaluator, like a really good example of something we could take out is if we've got the price here, then we don't also need to say that it's that. What else could it be? If you see something with a $sign in front of it, it shouldn't be confusing. Instead of saying season 2019, what's another way that you could communicate that information as like quickly as possible. So instead, this might be something like, so that's $65, 2019 with a dash in front of it. That's probably the fewest number of characters that we could use to communicate that this person started and has not quit yet. So team, all right, if you're on this site, presumably you're a Smashball fan and you know the 12 teams that are in the league. And so if you just say the name of the team, the Rastros, then like you'll need to also identify that it's a team. Even better if they have a logo that you can use. And they just use that instead. And then a true Smashball fan knows what that means. Similar thing with position. So this person was a catcher. All right. Well, there's only 4 positions on the team. And so only one of them starts with a C. And so if we do C and then the name of that logo of the team, that's probably a pretty concise way to communicate what this person's doing. Probably can't break their name down anymore, but we don't need to say that it's their name. What I call him, Jenny. And then we've got their picture. Okay, well now we're starting to get somewhere. We've cut out a whole lot of noise from this already. Next thing we have to do is figure out what's important on this. What do we really care about? Since it's a card valuator, presumably the price is pretty important. So like we want that up. Probably have to make some tough choices about the name or the picture. Since it's a card, I'm going to say the picture's probably pretty damn important. And true Smashball fan like knows when they see that picture, that's Steve Jenny. So that probably, it needs to be associated pretty close with that picture, I think, for that to work. But if those are 2, that's probably a 1. These things are probably like medium low important, and this probably doesn't matter so much at all. So we can use that to try to figure out how we communicate these things. So I'm going to say the minimalist way to do this is probably going to be to put that picture up front and center. I can't come up with a good reason for this, but my instinct is telling me that price should probably go down here. Like if you're in a store, they would kind of look like that, I think.
Like a baseball card.
Yeah. So yeah, if I was looking through a binder of cards, I would kind of expect that to be there. And don't like discount those kinds of metaphors. Like, all right, so how do people use cards? Well, they go through binders and shit. Cool. Or like those little like files. Use those metaphors. The whole point of design is to not be clever. It's to match someone's expectations. So you want it to be as familiar as possible. All right, and so then I want the name. I was gonna suggest maybe putting the name inside the picture, but that's feeling not very minimalist. So maybe we put that outside. All right, so now I have these 3 pieces of data that I still need to find a home for. None of them are especially important. And so the way we'll probably be able to do that is by making have a low value, which is a fancy way of saying like gray them out a little bit in the layout. Oh, and since we're just doing icons for this, shit, yeah. So we can probably fit that all on one thing. So we could do something like catcher for these guys and still like send those back in the layout a little bit. And then maybe do this something like that. That's a pretty minimalist design. All right, so we make our card look like that. Cool, let's get that far. So we got rid of all of the labels on these. That doesn't mean we need to take them out of the document. They still accurately describe these things. Although there's not, oh fuck, I did these wrong. The term, and the other one's a data definition. Like that. And all right, so I got a bunch of cards on here. The first thing that I would do to start realizing that is, so I've got these terms and definitions. Just hide the terms. Don't get rid of them. They're still part of the document hierarchy. All right, getting somewhere already. I also want to, I don't need those bullet points on the UL. So list style none. Goodbye. Let's bring those in. These probably, at least for right now, that margin. There we go. Okay, so we're starting to reset this a little bit. We can also get rid of the, or just not make the font for the heading any bigger. So this will be font weight 400, font size. There we go. Cool. Oh, and then we need images shit for these guys. So let's get old Steve Ginny on here. This is
Did
Steve.
he have the best scoring record in 2020?
Yes. The Steve Kenny is the principal architect at SendGrid and was my counterpart at Turing for years and years. Okay, so he's got an image on there too. Perfect. Oops. Okay, there we go. So if we did this in a pretty modern style, we'd put like maybe a drop shadow behind the card and some padding and stuff on it. Box shadow. Okay. Somebody didn't like about that drop shadow. Invalid property value. Horizontal, vertical, blur, radius, color. Let's see. Okay, that'll do it. I don't even like my HSL syntax. Zero hue. Oh, because I fucking A. All right. It's the end of the day for everybody. Third one is still a percentage. All right, let's make that dark as hell. Why don't I see it? Oh, there it is. It's outside of it. Okay, so like the pretty modern way to do it would be to do something like that. Let's put a max width on these two. Something like that. There's like a very small handful of things I think CSS just does wrong by default. And one of them is it allows images to overflow their containers by default, which is dumb. All right, so we got maybe something like that. And we can make these things, actually we can just flex all these. So for all of the cards, flex them, flex, flow, row, wrap.
Cards plural.
What was that?
Would that display flex not be on cards plural?
Oh, that's what I thought I was doing. Call. There we go. All right, so now we got rows of these. Maybe give each one some breathing room. Justify content in the space between our wicked lines. Space around. All right, so there's some world in which we'd probably do it kind of something like this. These like drop shadows. That's pretty like normal modern way to do it. It's not a minimalist way to do it. Because we don't need the box shadows. Shadows, gradients, really like any of that kind of stuff. Like questionably minimal. A more minimal way to do it would probably be, I'm going to do like the lightest border that I can, but even that I'm almost definitely going to get rid of by the end of this. So I'm going to say the border is 1 pixel solid, 0, 50%, 50%. Oop, not 50 there. That, and let's make it way lighter, even lighter, even lighter. Maybe something kind of like that. I wonder if it'll let me do half pixels too. maybe. All right. So something like that might be more minimal.
I didn't see, where was your logic placing it in rows? Was it in the display flex?
Row wrap.
Row wrap, sorry. Okay.
And I don't know why it's not applying that margin to the bottom. I wonder if I can margin bottom. Cool, that'll work. All right. So next thing I'm wondering, I can't look at this typography any longer, so we're gonna do something about that. Let's go with a sans. So if you haven't heard me talk about this before, sans serif doesn't have the little feet on the bottom. Serif fonts do. You see that I, see that R, see that F. Those help your eye follow along with a line as you're reading it. They on the web, it's a lot more common to have these in without the little feet for a few reasons. One is that like they never render quite right and on screens because they taper, and inevitably these things are rendered with pixels. A little bit less of an issue anymore, but if we're looking for clean, generally don't get much more clean than sans serif. So we want one that's like pretty big and open. Montserrat, that'll probably get the job done. This is another area that like you don't always want to be all that creative. Like Montserrat is a crazy popular typeface for a really good reason. And like you see it and you feel a certain way and you recognize it. And Develop Denver used Montserrat for years and years. All right, I'm going to put a 100 and the 100 weight and the 400 weight. Like this is what the different weights are. It's the same typeface. They just make the lines thicker. 100s are really hard to use correctly, but I think they're really going to help in on our page. I'll show you why. So our font family is going to be Montserrat. Fall back to sans serif. Cool. All right. So already so much better. But check this out. If we do the H1 and that 100 weight, it needs to be pretty big for a 100 weight to work. That cleans the fuck out of that though. Makes this all like nice and light and airy. I think I want to do that for the H2 also. That's a little bit more questionable. The smaller the type gets, the harder that becomes to read. Shoot. Maybe I'll try one that's a little bit lighter. Add the 300 in. What a like the yeah, it's a little bit better. So one of the like go-to mistakes that new designers make with visual design is doing too much with size, trying to make things more important just by making them bigger. You can do so much to create hierarchy by working with weight and background colors and like a lot of that stuff, placement. That stuff will do a lot more for you to put, and like color especially, pushing things forward and pulling things back. So like, for example, we want this 65. We want that to be kind of a big deal. So, all right, so a paragraph thing, this takes up the entire line and there's not an element in there. It's just text. That's a good case for right aligning. A lot of times you can't right align something. You can't right align elements. And the container needs to be big enough. We can do a text align right. Push that over to the side. I think I am going to make that a bit bigger too. Size. Cool. Okay, so this like, oh shoot, this is going to be hard to do. All right, so this 2019. Now is the first time I've actually looked at maybe changing the structure of this this card. The starting season, you never want to do this just for display reasons, but then you ask yourself, why did I want to display it this way? And it's because like these things belong together more than this does. So that's going position, team, starting season. Okay. And all of that is player data, so that all kind of belongs together. And it's opposite the name. And so then you have to think, all right, why is it why do these things have this like horizontal relationship with each other in a way that they don't with the price? So you go, all right, that means that they have some semantic meaning together. And so we could say that that is, say it's a section, I'd buy that. It's got a heading. So we call all of this the player data. Nope, I already used that for this. I'm going to keep that though. Player data attributes. Cool. So player data has two children, this H3 and this DL. I'm going to flex those and push them out to the sides. So we're going to go player data, display flex, justify content, and the space between. And it does not have enough room to do that. So it's, which is fine. It was never going to, but I want it to smash this thing down, not the other one. So I'm going to say flex flow row no wrap. Let's see if that prevents it. Fuck, it didn't. So now at this point, I usually take a look at these and okay, so I've got, oops, did that not make it in? Okay, there it is. That's what I was looking for. It's doing it on that one. Why is it only doing it on that one?
Because you haven't copied it over yet. Because you're doing all those manually.
Was I? I don't think I actually did anything manually yet. I was gonna.
No. The extra parts you haven't added in yet. So the divider you've put in right here.
Oh, you are correct. All right, much better. All right, Steve Jenny. Okay, so now I need to turn this. That needs to be some kind of like icon of some sort. And then same with that. Cool. So Ketzler uses the copyright symbol. So I'll just use the entity for it. So now I got to figure, like, do I want the whole word in there? Does the symbol communicate the meaning well enough? Yeah, it probably does. Okay. And then we want a logo for this team. Cool, perfect. So for this team, same thing. I think you can make a compelling argument that the logo carries enough semantic meaning. That I don't also need to have the text in there somewhere. Cool. And that one's going to be I have the M dash after it, and okay, isn't that it? If you were not aware, and it is just the letter M, a hyphen, an N dash, and an M dash are not the same things. They're actually like completely different characters. See if they'll show it. That's an M dash. See how it's like super fucking long? But I always get these backwards. I always think that like an M dash is for passage of time, but it's for like an interrupted thought. N dash is, there we go. That's passage of time. And then a hyphen is even shorter than that. Cool. So I want that. Okay, so now I'm going to label these things too. I'll say that this is the position, team, and then starting season. So player data team. I want to make that logo a lot smaller. So I'm going to say that the width of that, if you're ever trying to size an image, always go off of the width. Height is like an absolute last resort. It has to do with how like a lot of different calculations are done in CSS. They all go off of width rather than height. Cool, that's about right. And then we had a starting season and a position. All right, so the starting season, I want to make these two inline. I'm going to make them inline blocks so that I can do things like control the width. And I'll make this a block. Cool. So I want to take a look at how this is shaping up. Cool. All right, we're getting somewhere. So I want those to kind of like, I want those to be smaller and on the same like vertical playing field. So to do that, fuck, I'm trying to think of how I can do that. Might be able to do that with Flexbox if I got rid of this description list structure, which I still sort of don't want to do. What if I take, why is that taking up so much space? Oh, because I still have the width on them. That's why. Yeah, it's a little bit more like it. I'm going to text align this one right also, much better. And I wonder with this position, shoot, I wonder if I can do some margin magic with it. Whenever you have to like manually place something, that's where like CSS gets unnecessarily difficult. Let's see if that moves it. I don't think it did. It's getting overridden by that. Let's see. Never do the thing I'm about to do. Why is it still overriding it? Margin bottom. It really doesn't want me to do that. Oh, here it is. All right. Now, see, it's just fucking pushing the other thing around. I wonder, well, let me do a negative margin to pull that in. What if I do the negative margin from the top? Ah, fuck, all right, that's not it. All right, this is the worst reason to do something. And so hopefully you've seen like the pains I'm willing to go to get something like that to not happen. I'm gonna put this inside of a span and then I'm gonna flex it. I hate having elements that are just for styling. Player data position span. Get rid of that. And now this is going to be inline flex. And I am going to align, justify content, row, no wrap. I'm going to align items center. Fuck, did that not do it either? Should have. Maybe if I.
That wasn't.
What was that? What did you say?
Oh, that I don't know if that was supposed to be in your span or not.
Oh, no, because I'm trying to control the children from the parent. So that is taking up the space that I'd like it to take now. Oh, I guess it is. Yeah, it is technically there. It is exactly where I said it should be. What if I did flex start on that? Oh, that's obnoxious as fuck. It's just mangling everything else. All right, here's the next option. So instead of trying to flex that, we can try to absolutely position it. So you do position relative. So when you absolutely position something, it needs to be relative to something else. And then inside of this, you can say that it's position absolute. And this is where you can really start fucking with stuff. So we're going to say that it needs to be over to the right by some pixels. Oops. Ah, shit, this is the problem. It takes it out of the document flow, and so it can't push things out of the way anymore. So what if I give this back a little bit of size? And all right, back in business. Okay, so I want to absolutely position this from the right and the top. So what I'm going to do is something like this. Cool. So that's a -5 and a 24. And anytime I do something fucking stupid like that, that's a good reason to do a comment. Why did it break though? Oh, it's because I'm not in SAS.
Kyle, when you do your absolute positioning like this, does it, when you're like resizing your window, will it still stay in the same position?
It'll stay in exactly the same place, which is often not what you want it to do. Which that can be its own problem. I'm going to give this. Try to align that a little bit too. Starting season. $11 pixels. Also a visual alignment. Cool. And then, all right, next thing. I want to start thinking about how I can make these less important. So this works. We're going for our minimalist thing, right? So that starting season, we already determined it's like the least important thing on the page. So a really easy way to do that is to gray it way out. Like that. It's still there if you want it. I can probably make it a little bit smaller too. Cool. And that physical image, the one that I picked, all that space around it is part of the image. So I'm gonna do one more like goofy thing with this, and then I'm gonna stop trying to break CSS. I'm gonna put a negative margin on it to push it into it a little bit. Do anything? There we go. So it's a -11 also. Okay, cool. I also want to get that catcher and the logo grayed out a little bit. So catchler. One of the things we could do with that image is filter it. Oop, didn't like the negative margin on that though. I gotta fix for that. This is like the hackiest CSS I've done on one of these things before. All right, let's go all the way. Doesn't need color. Color's optional. So now that image is on top of the thing that I negative margined. You can fix that with a Z index. Just pushing it into the background. Fuck, didn't work. Maybe. What is this? The team? There we go. Ah, never mind. I'm going to put it on the image itself. So I'll say. Still didn't like it. Whack. All right. I still like grayscaling that, but I'm gonna not do the negative margin then. All right. So, all right, now last thing is that price, card value. Where did I put that? Is it not on here? Oh, it's just a P, probably. Yeah. Also going to move that in some. Too much. Perfect. And I'm going to, that is also a visual alignment. Anything with that mark on it is a hack. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to knock up the size on this again. But then I'm going to step back the intensity of it. So this will be fucking, there we go. That's pretty good. A little bit darker. Yeah, that's pretty good. Cool. I'm gonna step up the seasons just a little bit more. Okay, it's looking a little, has enough contrast to like not get you sued on like an ADA complaint. And last thing, I'm gonna maybe take that H3 and let's get, let's see what that looks like at 24. Too big, way too much. That's better. Cool. All right, so let's copy that over to the rest of them. All right, and so we wanted to do it's like sort of minimalist. It's getting there. Some other things that would help this would be this is a lot to jam onto a page. So what we could do is set a max width on the body. Maybe that. And then it's a pretty aggressive way to do this, but it'll work. We can flex all of the items in the body. Flex, flow, column, no wrap. And then justify them all to the center. So that's how we like center an element. We need to. Oh shoot, no, I need to have a container for this. This is another like kind of hacky thing. Is when to do something like that. These are called wrappers, called a body wrapper. So we're going to constrain the width of this wrapper, and then we're going to center that in the body. So this becomes body wrapper. So that's the thing that has a max width. And then this has a width of 100%. And that doesn't work. I look dumb in front of my friends. All right, so that's all the way wide. That should be flexed. Justify content center. Oh, because it's, I'm going cross-axis. This is a column, not a row. So it would be align items center. There we go. Cool. So now it's got a little bit more breathing room. If I really wanted it to be minimalist, do I need to see two of these things side by side? I did not. So I could even constrain it more. And that existing cards, you're telling me. So why don't we go ahead and display none that. We could still probably put a placeholder in this input. What's the least number of words that we could use? Probably that. One more thing that's bugging me on this. See how this has rounded corners and this doesn't? That's kind of a no-no. Sort of want to pick one or the other. The rounded corners feel not important to me. So I'm going to reset some of that out. Border none. I still need to be able to know where to click on this, and I don't now. And so what you could do is, like, the minimum thing you could do is have a bottom border. Border bottom. And we could do like 2 pixels of solid. This would be a good, like, since that's presumably a primary interaction on this, we could have like a shock of color on this to really draw your eye to it. Like that. It's like at least serving a function. And then padding is inside the border, so that'll help a little bit too. If we do a rem of padding, it'll give us some breathing room there. Maybe just on the bottom. So that'll be 1 there, nothing on the sides. Yeah. And then last thing before I call this a day. What's creating this space there? Okay, I have this padding, this, what is that? But that margin on the card I can probably get rid of. Still want the bottom margin though. What is a card? Is that coming from? That's just a div. So, oops, padding. Ah, there it is. Now that I want that. Got it. I'm going to flex it to the space around. Just flex it to the start. There we go. Cool. That's a pretty fucking minimalist design. Do this and you can search for your Smash Ball card players. Looks like an Apple page. What questions do you have?
When would that hacky stuff be appropriate?
So I would probably try to get it to where I ended up with it. And then all of a sudden, some of those hacks probably become less necessary. Like so in programming, you say like, get it working, make it right, make it fast in that order. So get it to look the way you want it to look. But then before you move on, before you start other work, before you start cranking on other features and shit, slow down and see if you can reverse engineer that to where you don't need the hacks. And sometimes you can't. Like a lot of the reason I had to do the hacks I did in that were because I just picked some random fucking image that had too much white space around it. So you go back and you retrim your image, things like that. Other questions?
Why did you choose to list your data in like a data list, and then is it data table and data
Data term and data definition.
data term data definition?
It's even like, I don't know that I would fully withstand an argument against using that. But really, anytime you have like a key value thing like that that you're representing semantically, those are the correct elements for it. The reason it might not withstand scrutiny is it's usually for like terms and definitions, like a dictionary. What this is a label of a category and this is the value of it. Does that fit into that category? Maybe, maybe not.
This was looking at like primarily like the minimalist designs. I don't know a good way to articulate it, but so there are certain situations where you'd want to go with the minimalist designs, and others you'd want something more robust. That what tends to be the thing that generates one preference over another.
Well, it doesn't have to do with preference. It has to do with like, what are you trying to communicate? Like, how do minimalist designs make you feel? Like, probably fancy, exclusive, futuristic. Like, those are like things that minimalist designs evoke. They also help you focus on things. That's not always what you need to do. Sometimes you need to make people feel at home, make them feel comfortable, make them feel safe. And so, like, if that's the vibe you're going for, fucking don't go for a minimalist design. It's very intimidating. And so you want to be bubbly and fun and use lots of color and like round the shit out of your corners. And sometimes you want to feel traditional, safe. We're your bank. We're not going to lose your money, man. We're not some fly-by-night fucking startup either. And so we got to look corporate. Like those are things that you're communicating. All these things are just different tools to communicate. Use words, use images.
So the styling is just a different way to embed messages.
Yes, that is it. It has nothing to do with decoration, like art. It's none of those things. It is yet another tool on top of like what you named your company, what you named these products, the kinds of tone that you use when you're writing your copy and your visual presentation. All of those are in the exact same category. Other questions? All right, survey's out. Do it. See it stand down.